No, that's good. I can edit things out.
Oh, I don't know what's happening.
Oh, I started recording, but I thought that you were going to say something and then stopped when you realized I had clicked a button.
No.
All right.
Not at all?
You said we're going, and I said, all right.
All right. Don't edit any of that out.
Okay.
Welcome to Ben and Curt Till It Hurts. There's a look behind the curtain for you. I'm Ben.
And I'm Curt.
And we have a guest again.
Yay!
Hello, I'm Megan Whitman, Benjamin's wife.
Yeah.
Finally.
You've heard of
Woo.
me. Yeah.
Yep. She's been present in the background of every episode.
You've had
up
a
to
presence
this point.
in every episode. You've influenced every episode in some way.
Yeah. And now you're here. We're going to hear it straight from Megan's mouth.
Straight from the Megan.
Yep.
So what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? Tom Waits.
Woo!
Yeah, lounge singer, lounge guy, Americana expert, collector of all things. Wonderful. Tom Waits.
So I guess like the structure that we did this today, we mentioned doing the Rain Dogs trilogy, or whatever you want to call that last time. We're not doing that. We each picked our favorite, or arguably most important, Tom Waits album, and we brought each one to the table. So now we're just going to talk about each one, and why we like it, why we chose it, pros and cons of each one. I just shrugged, but you can't tell.
Yeah.
This is an audio show.
What we like about him, what we hate about him, what we want him to edit out.
Before we do that, though, we have to do our usual check-in.
Yeah.
So, Megan, what kind of stuff are you into? We'll give the listeners a little eyesight into what you do. That didn't make any sense.
Okay, I brought in 3 things: a book, a game, and a TV show.
Perfect.
I'll do the book first, because, it's important, upward trajectory. The book, I'm reading On Trails by Robert Moore. It is a book about the idea of trails and how they develop. Almost done. Great piece of nonfiction. He talks about animals' pheromone trails and Native American trail systems and the advent of the modern hiking trail. It manages to talk about everything from, the evolution of legs to, the Cherokee language in this process. And it's very fascinating and a very nebulous piece of nonfiction. On Trails, Robert Moore.
He sure covers some ground.
Oh, shit.
Oh.
Yikes, shut it down. I'm really excited to read this book when you're done with it. It seems super cool. And Megan's kept giving me these little factoids about the differences between how different places had trails developed in them. It's a wide-ranging piece of nonfiction. Seems fascinating.
Yeah, it all seems to be inspired by his journey down the Appalachian Trail, which is a very fashionable thing to do these days, but he has written a very unfashionable book about it, so that's pretty good. Gaming. I play Stardew Valley exclusively.
I'm just going to leave for half an hour.
Yeah,
if
perfect.
That's
I'm
cool with everybody.
into this.
This is now the episode.
We'll yell.
You guys talked about farming simulators, and I'm like, where's the Stardew Valley talk? Where is it?
There was a significant lacking amount of Stardew Valley. Maybe it deserves its own episode.
I'm never going to play that game.
Is
Okay.
You two can have an episode about Stardew
Benjamin
Valley.
doesn't need to play the game. I'm I'm 107 hours in, and I'm like, check out my farm. I've accomplished the major goals. I'm currently making every character fall in love with me, so I can make an educated choice about who I'm going to marry.
It's exactly what she did in real life, also, which was it was an interesting process to be a part of.
Yeah, I just keep muttering around I'm going to make this bitch love me. It's I just
you must feel really glad
town.
that you won.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
So Stardew Valley is the best farming simulator. No offense to other people.
I'll allow it. I'll allow your opinion.
Yeah. How long have you spent on that little town?
So I burned through. I have not played it since there was snow on the ground, but I played it from February until I don't know. I played it for 4 or 5 months, and I cranked up 88 hours, and then I never touched it again. It's over when you stop. It gets very overwhelming to start again because you kind of ease yourself into all these responsibilities, and then when you don't do it, and then you turn it on, you're like, "Oh my god, there's so much to do." It just becomes kind of overwhelming.
I think the joy of the slow plod towards 100% completion that I'm aiming for right now,
Yes.
like for real, is
I love this.
Yeah, is that you lose some of that pressure to a certain degree because you're like, well, this is going to take me more years in game, so
Yeah.
I might as well just take my time. Today I'm going to collect my eggs. Maybe I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that big of a deal.
I think for me too, something that I have a hard time doing is like, if you like, say you've already gotten the achievements for earning the amount of money you need and all your livestock ones, it's definitely, it kind of makes sense to like sell some livestock and like keep focus on your new goals. But I have a hard time doing that. I'm like, I need to get up and take care of 24 cows before I go fishing, which makes it for a long Stardew Valley day.
Well, I've also decided that I wanted my farm to be like my dream farm if I was a farmer. So, and I've been really getting into just living the farm life. So I feel a certain peace and serenity when I talk to each of my 4 cows and pet them every day. And I'm like, oh, good morning, Dolly. How are you today? Like,
That makes sense to me.
yeah, it's the most soothing thing in the world.
Then you said you had one more thing?
One more thing. Final thing. The show Glow on Netflix.
Ah.
It has been picked up for a second season. The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. It is a fictionalized show about the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, starring Alison Brie and Betty Gilpin and Mark Maron. It's the funniest thing I've seen this year.
It's really good.
It's also the saddest thing I've seen this year. It's both hilarious and sad and weirdly inspirational. Makes you want to go out and like pile drive people. It's the best.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have also been watching Glow. It's great.
I watched the first episode and I really liked it, but I just like didn't keep watching it for not because I didn't like it or anything, but it's on my to-do list.
Yeah.
It rolls into a bigger ball than it appears to be heading towards in the first episode. It gets the characters just bloom in front of you. Love it. Love it.
It's a great ensemble show, but with like a really cool setting because a lot of ensemble shows come with kind of boring, like boilerplate settings, like office workers or like school teachers. These are wrestlers. Like it's. Not only are they wrestlers, they're female wrestlers at the dawn of female wrestling. So it's like a period piece to a certain degree, but it's also like a workplace comedy and also like a serious emotional drama because for some reason whenever you have a show with all women on it, it suddenly becomes about women's issues.
Yeah.
Like, with that said, one of the best scenes in it is a pregnancy test is done. And it's like an 80s pregnancy test, so it involves like beakers and vials and like a 10-page fold-out booklet.
It's a pregnancy test montage.
It is what it is.
Yeah, which you couldn't really do today, but it works really well.
And it was hilarious. I just wanted to call my mom and be like, was it like that? Yeah. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, so Glow. Everyone should try it at least.
Perfect. What do you got, Ben?
Well, Glow, for one thing. I have been watching Glow as well. But other than that, if I'm being totally honest, all I've been doing is infiltrating neo-Nazis on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah. Things have gotten kind of weird for me. I want to be upfront and clear about this. I'm not a neo-Nazi.
Not yet.
Not yet, right? I'm being red-pilled, they say. Something about a red pill. I don't know exactly what it means, but yeah, those communities are fascinating and they are out in the open and they are really scary sometimes. So to kind of mitigate my own fear of what I see happening on the internet now, I've started to confront it like head on. And I can give you I can give you a friggin' trail map to this stuff. Go if you know how there are those YouTube channels, your Paul Joseph Watsons, your InfoWars, stuff like that. Go to the comment section, all right, and click on anybody's name who posts like some real anti-Semitic, racist, white nationalist bullshit, right? And look at what they're subscribed to, okay? Yeah. And then do that, follow that circuit. Not follow that circuit fewer times than you think you will need to. And you will end up on a Discord chat server watching 3 people get the history of National Socialism by a guy whose username is literally Church of Hitler.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. again, within 3 days of starting to like dig into this stuff at all, and not even really digging that deep, I turned over a fucking rock, and I found the worms and grubs underneath it, and this is going to be a big part of my life, I think.
I kind of had a similar experience in high school because my dad had found a blank burned CD outside of his truck, like on the ground. So he grabbed it thinking like, and he gave it to me and he was like, "Hey, was this yours? I found it outside of the truck." And it said like Noop.com, like NEWP.com on it. And I was like, "Oh, no, it's not." And I was like, "But I'll check it out." And so I just like typed in NWEP.com, and it was New England White Pride or White Power. And I was like 16 or 17, and I had found this whole website that, like, I knew what neo-Nazis were at that age, but I didn't realize there was such a presence of it in New England at that time. And my curiosity, I wanted to look into it, not because I'm like, a neo-Nazi, but I was just so, I hate to say the word fascinated, but I was very just curious about this whole world that I didn't know was right around me in that way. And I ended up not doing it just because I was a kid and I was so afraid that somebody would have found out that I was looking up like white power stuff on my computer at home, and I just didn't want to open that can of worms of like having to explain that I'm not I'm not trying to be a neo-Nazi. I was just very curious about this thing around me. So I never went down the rabbit hole like you appear to be researching. Yep. But it's pretty scary stuff.
It is scary stuff. It's scary. You see these like YouTube videos of Nazi rallies with like inspirational music over them, and they have hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. This is not like a niche movement.
Isn't it interesting how those Nazi videos can go either way, based entirely on what music you put behind it? Play yakety sax behind it. It's hilarious. Isn't Hitler funny? And then,
Yeah, it's definitely something. That was pretty heavy, Ben.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been into.
Hey, Nazis are a thing. I work at a restaurant. A man comes in on the regular, swastikas tattooed on the tops of his hands, where people can see it. I'm like, aren't you embarrassed?
This kind of goes back to my love of Inglourious Bastards a little bit, and this is something that I talked about on our wrap-up episode, I think, about Tarantino, which is that like the Nazis made such a huge impact in the mid-20th century. A negative impact, obviously. I'm not going to try to make it like a neutral impact. They had a big negative impact on the 20th century and the way the rest of the 20th century unfolded after the fucking Holocaust and World War II and shit like that. But we've never really acknowledged or processed the impact that they had.
Yeah.
And I think that much of the greatest literature of the late 20th century and Quentin Tarantino's best movie, hands down, both indisputable, both have kind of fingers in the pie of trying to process what Hitler did. Like Hitler was a really important person in the 20th century, and if we make him like an unspeakable name like Voldemort, then it turns him into an object of fascination, like with the Death Eaters, right? The Death Eaters worship Voldemort. Partially, I've gotten the impression, because he is so forbidden. That might be an inroad into learning more about Voldemort. It's like, oh, why don't they want me to read about Hitler? What are they trying to hide? Then suddenly you're a middle schooler and you're on a Discord server with some dude named Church of Hitler who's ready to explain National Socialism to you. And like why it's totally, there's a big wave of refugees coming. We got to make sure we institute National Socialist policies.
And once you get to that point, you're ready to listen.
You're ready to listen.
You have the thirst for knowledge.
Someone was asking to be red-pilled.
Yeah.
Which essentially is asking to be radicalized. We talk a lot about radicalized Muslims doing suicide bombings and terrorist attacks and all that. What we don't talk about is our own homegrown terrorists, our own right-wing neo-Nazi homegrown terrorists who are going onto these chat boards, their Reddits, their YouTubes, their Discords most often, and asking to be radicalized.
Ignoring the internet aspect, that's exactly how Timothy McVeigh happened, except it was gun shows and the Nazis and charming individuals he met there that radicalized him and resulted in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Yeah, terrorism, scary stuff.
Bummer. Curt.
Yeah, Curtis, what have you been up to?
Okay.
I live with him.
Yeah,
So
Yeah, she has to... the way I described it the other day is, like, every day I dig deeper and deeper into this, and then she comes home and I'm like, look at the dead mouse the internet left on our doorstep today. Look at it. I wave it in front of her. I say, look at what you can make it do if you swing it around in this exact way. I spend probably 10 minutes a day describing, and it's a grueling 10 minutes. But,
Feels like 20.
feels like hours.
I was just say 20 is being optimistic.
But she puts up with it.
I haven't been up to a whole lot, unfortunately. The only thing I really have that I was thinking about is I recently got a Sega Genesis, which I haven't...
Aladdin
Big
King.
tonal shift, which I
Right.
used to research neo-Nazis.
Yeah. I haven't... the Sega Genesis was my first console, and I haven't had one for years. So a lot of the games that I played were like really easily accessible games. So like Aladdin, Lion King, Sonic 2, Sonic 3... So they're really cheap. So that has kind of been my past couple weeks, was acquiring these games that I haven't played in like 20 years and then playing them on a Sega Genesis, which is super weird because there are games like Sonic 2, which are one of my favorite games, but I've played them, but I've played them like on the GameCube. Mm-hmm. So playing the game on the Sega Genesis is like triggering emotions that I haven't had while playing them on the GameCube, that for some reason the controller and the game itself, gives me a response that I haven't had for like 20 years or whatever, because I got it when I was like 6 or 7.
That's a pretty special thing. People ignore how important the controller is to those nostalgic feelings.
So
I don't think you can debate it when you're holding one of those tiny rectangular Nintendo controllers and you're like, this is so different.
Yeah.
So that's about it. I now have 5 games, I think, in my Sega Genesis collection: Aladdin, Lion King, Mortal Kombat 2, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and X-Men. So 6.
And something called Psycho Fox?
That's a Master System. That's a Sega Master System.
Okay, well, what
game.
is it?
It's just a crappy platformer. Huh. I think that was Sega's... It was their attempted mascot for that console.
Before
and
Sonic.
then it kind of flopped, so they had to come up with Sonic to be the competitor to Mario. And that is about it for that. For me, I've just been playing some Sega.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, before we move into the Tom Waits, do you want to... We have a special feature to talk about.
We do. I kind of forgot about that, actually, even though it's in my notes right here. We're on episode 10 of Ben and Curt Till It Hurts. Going pretty well. We're looking at what works. We're looking at what doesn't work. We're ready to try some new things. We are doing a giveaway. Yay! So, like I mentioned earlier, we're each going to be talking about one of our favorite Tom Waits albums today. And so I wouldn't have to pick or be biased. I bought a copy of Rain Dogs that we'll be giving away to a listener that does what you have to do.
Does what I tell them to.
Does what you have to do to enter the contest. So we'll be giving away a copy of Rain Dogs. We're going to talk about that more towards the end of the show once you've heard more about Rain Dogs. So that'll be fun. So that's about it for that.
Yeah, let's get into the Tom Waits.
Let's do it.
As Curtis, you brought Nighthawks at the Diner.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit about why you brought that album to the table.
Shut it down. Start it over. 20 minutes in.
We're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Last time we went 45 before we shut it down and started over.
Holy smokes.
No. So I don't know how popular Tom Waits is. Like, I know he's very popular, but I don't know if it's like people our age or if everybody kind of knows Tom Waits. I don't really know where he falls into that spectrum of American.
I think he's very popular among a certain type of person. Like, I feel like Tom Waits is something you stumble into after you, like, read your first Bukowski novel.
Yeah.
It's,
or if you have a friend that read a Bukowski novel.
Exactly. You have, like, a hard-living friend who's like, you know what's really romantic? Like, drinking too much and staying out too late. And then that person hears a Tom Waits song and, like, decides it's their favorite thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I didn't know if it was worth... I mean, maybe this is too common knowledge, but... I guess it's worth mentioning that Tom Waits is from California, which actually kind of surprised me because all of his songs are about like
The New York.
this person in like New York, or like this person who lived in the Midwest and then moved to New York, like. But his career has like spanned 5 decades, which is also crazy. That it makes sense, but I didn't really think about it until then. And the other important thing about Tom Waits, especially in the context of this episode, I think a lot of artists have like that album. Like if you listen, just examples of like bands that I like. If you like AC/DC a lot, Back in Black is their best album. If you like Gwar, Scumdogs is their best album. Tom Waits doesn't really have that, and that's because he goes into these phases where his career has had so many different sounds and themes that you really can pick any album that he has and make some kind of argument for why that is the best or your favorite anyway. I personally chose Nighthawks, which the only reason we're doing that one first is because it came out in 1975, which is before yours. So you guys' albums. I made it worse. So Nighthawks is, I want to say the 3rd album. I don't really remember.
Somewhere around there.
It's Closing Time and Spare Change and then Nighthawks? Or
Yeah.
maybe, yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Foreign Affairs is in there somewhere. I don't know. But the significance behind that album is Tom Waits started a career that is a kind of jazzy lounge singer style music, and then he kind of evolved over time into like a storyteller, and then like weird experimental rock type thing. And I think Nighthawks has that sound where it's definitely a jazzy poetry style album, but it has a lot of the seeds that it has a lot of the storytelling and the spoken word and a lot of the ideas that would develop into his later albums while still having that jazzy sound. It's a lot more adventurous than, say, Closing Time, his first album. And it's a studio live album. I think I made that term up, but maybe not. Where it's his first live album, but it's all new material, and the gist of it was they set up a recording studio with tables and chairs, and they gave out beer. So it was like watching a live performance, but it was all new material recorded professionally. So it doesn't have that awkward live sound of musicians / instruments being drowned out or anything.
This was something that we learned reading an article about this. Apparently, it was the audience was made up of recording executives, friends, and family.
Yeah, you had to be invited to go.
Yeah, an invitation-only experience where they gave out beer. And,
and I think it was maybe 50 people. Like, it was a pretty small crowd. And
which I think makes his patter a little bit funnier when you realize that he's
talking to people.
Sorry,
addressing it to like 50 of his friends,
family, people
and
he knows.
coworkers.
Yep, I love that. It does have a very intimate feel.
Like all his dirty jokes are funnier at that point.
And
he's not telling a group of strangers how horny he is.
Yeah. And the thing that's also significant, I don't have this came out in 1975, long before I was alive, so I don't have the context of hearing this, having only heard his first couple albums, but some of the strengths of Nighthawks is that he really develops some of his storytelling ability, which is one of the strongest aspects of his songwriting. And there's a lot of humor in Nighthawks, which isn't really present in the albums that took place before this. And it makes a big difference because on his earlier albums, Tom Waits is a great storyteller. That is almost more or just as important as the music, is listening to what the song's about, hearing his story. But Nighthawks gives you the ability to you can see how he captivates an audience. It's not just you listening to it alone. You're hearing his ability to talk to an entire crowd and bring them in and tell a funny story or mix a joke in before a song, and see how he really it works on everybody. It's not just an experience you might have listening to an album, and it's a really cool live way to experience that. That's kind of why I chose it. I think it's a very unique album, and it also has the seeds of what his music would become without necessarily being too far from the jazzy, loungy style of the older stuff. Any thoughts on Nighthawks now that you kind of have mine?
Nighthawks at the Diner. I had never really listened to this album before you
really?
proposed it. Yeah, I have had a spotty track record with Tom Waits. Definitely not a completionist when it comes to Tom Waits. I always just kind of dipped a toe in wherever I was intrigued by. And for some reason, the early lounge stuff had never really intrigued me that much. But listening to Nighthawks at the Diner, listening to the poetry of his lyrics it's beautiful. Like, the imagery that he chooses for different songs. Having that... The song that always sticks out to me is Eggs and Sausage.
I think that's right? Probably, Eggs and Sausage is definitely, for me, one of the strongest tracks on the album.
Eggs and Sausage just conjures that feeling of being in a diner.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of his songs kind of conjure a feeling of being in the diner, hence the title Nighthawks at the Diner, I guess. Yeah.
I think it's, because... obvious, but the title is named after that famous painting of the lonely man,
right?
Like the three people in the diner.
Brilliant painting. I forget who painted that.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But it's an incredible painting from the mid-century
It's
New
like
York
an
scene.
illuminated diner with darkness surrounding it, and it creates like this intimate, warm kind of thing when you look at it. And I feel like the record does the same thing, where he's inviting you into this space.
You feel like
this world.
You feel like every person is in the diner. I'm talking about the painting and the album, kind of. You feel like every person is in the diner for a different reason. And just by these little snapshots that Tom Waits and the painter, the unnamed, unknown painter, just by the little snapshots that they give you, you get a sense, not a complete sense, but a partial sense for why they're in there. And that's one of the cool things that art can do.
For me, one of the reasons that it was so important was, I think, from my experience when I found the album, I heard the album when I was 24, and I was out of college, not really working. I was working in a kitchen, not really sure what my plan was. I was living with my dad, and it really fit into my lifestyle at that point. The up late at night, kind of doing, just going places just so you didn't have to hang out by yourself. I liked the romanticized hanging out at a bar, because I worked at a bar, and a lot of I believe Tom Waits worked in a lot of kitchens before his career took off, and I think with his ability to tell stories, he may have even not. I think I read that in that Tom Waits on Tom Waits book, that he would be like a dishwasher, so he wouldn't have any qualms about just quitting when he had a series of shows that he could perform. He really understands a lot of the humor, and when he says something about being in a diner or in that type of atmosphere, it really resonates with, oh yeah, man, I used to go close that bar and hang out and not even get drunk. Just didn't want to be at home by myself, so I would, go there.
Yeah, I think he has this way of really romanticizing griminess to a certain point, like greasy spoons and drunks and like hookers and things like that. He makes it seem very charming and very romantic, and in a way that I think we all have like our favorite shitty breakfast spot, and you love it because it's so shitty and no one else likes it. It's your spot. I think Tom Waits probably has a lot of spots like that. So,
what's your favorite track on that album, Curtis?
Eggs and Sausage is a really big one for me. I think really I like the intro of Emotional Weather Report. I think that's a really cool idea, and I think he kind of explores it deeper than you would think he needs to. And I like that, but I really think with the section of tracks On a Foggy Night, Eggs and Sausage, and Better Off Without a Wife, I think those three songs really just go so well and flow into each other, and that kind of wraps up the first side of that album. And then after that, you get into some of the more like, I don't know if it's like, it feels like freeform poetry. Like sometimes you don't know if it's poetry or if he's just speaking, or maybe it's a little bit of both. I think those three songs really capture what I like about that album so much. I also really like Big Joe. Is that it? Big Joe and Phantom 309. That's a really good story. And even though you kind of can tell where it's heading, it's still a nice story to hear.
It is the most classic hitchhiker ghost story that's ever been written. I feel like this story's been told a million ways.
He has lived here for 10 years.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's
go down and visit the gravestone.
But he does it so elegantly and so smoothly that it doesn't matter that you've heard it before. Yeah. Hearing a story you've heard before isn't ruined necessarily.
Now he's reading a story written by somebody else, right?
Yes, it's written by somebody else.
It looks like Tommy Fail on here. I don't know if that's the name of the author. But I think that's interesting. I wonder what the origin of that story was. I wonder if that story is somehow the inspiration for that classic ghost story.
And I wonder if it might just be American folklore of not really having an origin author. The thing that I liked about it so much, which usually kind of doesn't work with what I like, when I first listened to it, I can't remember the name of what I'm thinking of, but I had wondered if it was like an allegory for being ridden in on the river Styx, like like he had died and not known it, and he was being taken to the afterlife by, on this big ship. And it isn't. It's actually a much nicer, more pleasant story of like, you were down on your luck, and then a ghost helped you. And
hey, maybe hold on to that nickel, son.
Yeah, and I think that is really nice. But it was, you knew kind of where the story was going, but I really enjoyed that it kind of had a positive spin on it.
Your way of summarizing that story really just tickled me, by the way. You were down on your luck, and a ghost helped you.
Yep.
I like that.
What about for you guys? What are some of your strong songs off that?
I think I went in a different direction with the ones I really liked off this album, which is I like the kind of boozy ballads. I liked Better Off Without a Wife a lot, and I really like Warm Beer, Cold Women.
I forgot that I love that song.
Those two are my favorite.
I slipped away that is on that album.
This album has a lot of those like boozy piano ballads where he's very loose and they're a lot of fun. And he has such a distinctive voice in this album. He hasn't quite hit like full like
yeah.
So it's kind of beautiful still in a weird way, and I think those two songs exemplify his voice before it.
I think
full bourbon.
One of the biggest things, and like I said, I've listened to this album a lot. It's one of my favorites, so maybe I've looked too far into this analysis. But one of the things that I liked about Warm Beer and Cold Women so much is he has a part of the song where he talks about being in a bar and he is talking a sailor's ear off and the sailor really doesn't want to talk to him, and then he says, until I showed him my tattoo. And I may be looking too far into this, but the way I interpret that is he's trying to talk to this sailor just to have somebody to talk to, and the sailor isn't interested. And I think that the tattoo he shows them might be a Navy tattoo, and then he realizes that that sailor is looking into something that, this could be me, and I think that's a very touching, and there's just a lot of sadness, but like in that song that he really tells well without kind of hitting you over the head with it.
Yeah, Tom Waits is all about those little like signifiers of companionship and of fellowship that you can discover among strangers. Yeah, and I think a Navy tattoo is emblematic of that. I like that.
I don't know, this might not have been the best time to say, but aside from the songs that I like a lot, one of the aspects overall that I really like a lot about this is Tom Waits is a very independent artist. So if you look at the personnel on an album, there can be 15 to 20 people on an album. He doesn't have a band. So...
Well... He sort of does.
Does he?
He has a guy that played piano on like 6 of his albums.
Okay.
He has a guitarist that's been on most of them. Robin? Something.
Oh, I'm gonna have a hard time looking up his name.
Fine.
But there's...
But he has a cache, like the guitar noise of this particular musician started at Swordfish, I think, and has continued on Robin, I think it is.
Yeah. I had looked on I thought the guitar work, I'm getting a little bit ahead, on Rain Dogs. I love the guitar work on that. So I had looked it up who had played, and he has a tendency on his like listed musicians, it'll be like guitar on tracks 1 through 4, 7, 10, 15, 16, and like this person plays Styx on an album. He'll have like, I'm looking at Rain Dogs right now, and there's like 15 listed musicians.
He also has 3 guys who play the glass harmonica on one album, so who are we going to judge?
Yeah. And one of the things that I like so much about Nighthawks is it's one group playing on the whole album. And you have
That
one
pianist.
person playing piano, one person playing the saxophone, you have someone playing the upright bass. Tom Waits comes in and out on guitars a little bit, but he's not featured on every song, but he's the guitar guy. And I think that is something that you don't really get in a lot of his albums, where it's one band that spans across the whole album, which I think gives it a level of consistency that not a lot of his other albums have. Not that they're affected poorly by it, but...
I love it when he introduces the band towards the end. That's such a classic moment for like a live show that I like that it makes it onto the album. It contributes to that overall atmosphere.
And there's so much when he introduces them at one point, and he says, they all came from good families, but somewhere along the way, they ended up with me, or whatever he says. Like, I really like that.
I loved all his weird patter. Like, during good moments, he'll comment. He'll be like, this bassist should be chained up somewhere. He's a wild animal.
I like that. And I think it's especially great where he pays that acknowledgement, because you have a lot of musicians where they're a solo act. Like, this might not be a really great example because I don't know for sure, but like, nobody really knows, who Steve Miller's drummer is. That they don't. A solo artist doesn't have to give tribute to the people in their band.
Come on, Curtis, it's the Steve Miller Band.
Yeah, and I think that it's nice that he acknowledges on these live performances that, these studio musicians that he has hired are still an active part in the construction of the music.
Well, for Tom Waits, too, particularly, they have a more active part, maybe, than other musicians in other bands. From what I understand, his music writing process is to get into a room with a bunch of studio musicians and start, like, clapping out a rhythm and be like, come on,
Can
guys.
you do something that sounds like this?
Come on, accordion got clangier.
Looking at the stage shows, looking at the stage setup from a Tom Waits concert, especially in his later years, it looks like a thrift store on the stage of just like, hey, here's a set of bongos, use those on something. Like, use them with your feet.
I read a quote that was like, Tom Waits would consider any drum set without a piece of sheet metal and lead pipes to be lacking. It's like, I think that's pretty accurate.
Speaking of lead pipes and sheet metal, it's a good time to transition to Rain Dogs.
I just want to say that, are there any aspects of this album that you think don't work so well? Do you think there are anything that kind of holds it back from other Tom Waits albums?
I have to be in a really specific mood to enjoy any Tom Waits album, I guess, but it's the same with this one.
Yeah.
If I'm not ready, if I want more music, less patter, then it's going to be hard for me to sit through Nighthawks at the Diner.
I guess that would be my only complaint, is that sometimes it does get a little too loose, potentially, where you're like, come on, buddy.
It's like a comedy routine.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very much like a comedy
And you can
routine.
enjoy it repeated times in the same way that you can enjoy a comedy routine repeated times. But you have to be in that mood.
Yeah. You wouldn't listen to the same comedy routine back to back, generally.
Right.
I mean, I have literally done that, but I'm not general. I understand what you're saying. Generally,
You never get to the end of Nighthawks at the diner, and you're like, you know what? I think I'll just go right back to the beginning.
Press play, baby. We're going back.
Let's whip it back through.
That is also something that, it's one thing that works so well for it, that also kind of works against it in that regard, is I think it's so nicely constructed that when it's over, it feels over.
You're done.
And it's like a movie. You don't want to just press play again.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, Ben, that you have to be in a certain mood to enjoy any Tom Waits album. And I think for me, that's one of those things, is that for the second half of that album, a lot of the spare parts 1 and 2, it's a lot of just improv jazz kind of, and just speaking, and you're not sure if it's poetry or just spoken word, and you have to be in the mood for that.
with that said, Spare Parts 1 is probably my favorite song on the album.
Okay, well, fine. No. Which one is it, Ben? No. So yeah, let's move into Rain Dogs, which I'm so glad you chose, because that is almost, it's tied with Nighthawks, depending on how I feel. If I want a classic Tom Waits, Rain Dogs is my go-to album.
Yeah, when I told Curtis that he had to choose between Rain Dogs and Nighthawks at the Diner, I felt like I was taking a little piece of him away.
It hurt. It really hurt.
Well, I chose Rain Dogs knowing that Ben had chosen Bone Machine and you had chosen Nighthawks. And I think that Tom Waits' discography can kind of be kind of divided into two sections. There's the early lounge section, and then there's When It Gets Weird.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to pick an album that kind of straddled the When It Gets Weird line. And I think that line is actually at Swordfish Trombones. That's when he starts, like, producing his own stuff. Mm-hmm. But Rain Dogs is, I think, the one where he settles into his weirdness, where he, like, has figured it out. He knows his spiel. And I've heard a lot of different things to describe Tom Waits' music, and Carnival Polka is one of my favorites, and I feel like he has several really good Carnival Polka songs on Rain Dogs. But you talked about how Nighthawks at the Diner is very cohesive. Rain Dogs is very not cohesive. Yeah. Rain Dogs has, like, those Carnival Polka songs. It has a lot of, like, Spanish-inspired songs, like Jockey Full of Bourbon, Tango Till They're Sore. These are, like, very Spanish-inspired songs, which is interesting, because Tom Waits used to live next to Mexico.
I was going to say, I just learned that today doing some last-minute research, that he was from California and spent a lot of time on the border.
Yeah, and listened to a lot of kind of like mariachi music when he was a kid. So that's kind of in there. But it also has, like, some blues influence. It's got a couple ballads. It's got, like, Downtown Train, the poppiest thing he's ever done. Rod Stewart covered it.
Yeah.
His is a lot better than Rod Stewart's. So this
I agree.
Shade thrown.
Everyone...
In your face, world.
Anyone who has ever heard the Tom Waits version agrees. I have a theory about that, by the way. The reason that everybody who listens to Tom Waits' Downtown Train would like it better than Rod Stewart's is because you could imagine Tom Waits on a train.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts about that, too, for when we get into
there.
it.
But, so, I think this album was, we said 83. Is that correct?
85.
85. That is conveniently the same year he started writing with his wife, Kathleen.
Okay.
And so this is they have been a writing duo ever since then. And so I think this is their first collaboration album. And I think you can kind of see her in it to a certain degree. But, trying to think about what else needs to be said about this album. You talked a lot also about how in Nighthawks, Tom Waits deals with kind of stories, and I think he makes a shift from kind of very city-centric stories to American fables as he moves through into this series. Like, Singapore is about, like, San Francisco in the 1800s is what you feel like. He's talking about, like, midgets getting off, like, pirate ships. Like, it's and Cemetery Polka could be like a Lemony Snicket poem, like, about a strange family. And they're all very interesting kind of songs, but they're not the same settings as his earlier works. It's a lot less. There are a few, like Gun Street Girl and things like that, but he's moving away from the city a little bit, and also away from those kind of traditional, gritty, kind of Kerouac hobo stories. And
the thing with me that I like about this album so much is I had heard that I've liked this album quite a bit for a long time, and I had known that it was a kind of in a loose trilogy of Swordfish Trombones, Rain Dogs, and Frank's Wild Years. And in preparation for this episode, I bought Frank's Wild Years, but I haven't listened to it yet. And I have listened to Swordfish Trombones quite a bit and Rain Dogs. And I think it's funny that it's referred to as like a loose trilogy, because I think any theme that is he thinks about it so much that it's present in 3 albums. I feel like it's really hard to say that is a loose theme. I didn't know what Rain Dogs were until I did research for this episode, so I don't know if you two know.
I still don't know.
If listeners don't know, and apparently you two, Rain Dog is referred to a dog that wanders away from home and then loses his scent in the rain and is lost. And that really made these, I say 3, but I haven't listened to the third one yet. It made these 2 albums make so much more sense of these characters that wandered away from their nice... I know this is on Swordfish, but he, someone from Illinois who's now overseas on shore leave in, not Singapore, but I don't want to say Hong Kong, maybe. These different characters that have wandered away from home and now they're lost and they're experiencing these dark, seedy, underground worlds.
I feel like it's Shanghai.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to explore, and exploring each of these songs with that theme in mind makes this album even stronger than I had, liked it before. So what are some of your guys' favorite songs or moments off this album?
Oh,
I love Clap Hands.
I do too,
Clap Hands is up there.
Clap Hands, Singapore starts you off really strong, right? And
it's very bombastic.
It has bombastic. It has bombastic and quite concrete lyrics. They're still a little obscure in their exact meanings, but you can picture these things in your head. Whereas with Clap Hands, it's tough to even figure out a setting for that song.
One of the things that sticks out with Clap Hands that I love is that it seems that there was a conscious choice to strip away production quality in it. A lot of professional microphones have, I don't know if you guys know this or don't want to talk down to anyone, but just for listeners, like a pop filter is something that makes it when you're singing, if you don't have a pop filter, it makes your B's and P's blow out the microphone. So they have like foam that's what the foam is for, so it doesn't do that. And it seems like he consciously chose to take that off. So when he says words like politician,
pistol,
it bangs in the microphone, and it in the griminess of that song, it works very well. And I think it shows to his songwriting strength to say, I'm going to take this thing that's usually frowned upon and use it to accentuate the theme that I'm going for in songwriting.
Yeah, I would say that what characterizes Rain Dogs to me is, and Bone Machine to an extent as well, is that he's no longer making songs about characters, he's making songs by those characters.
That's a good point.
Clap Hands feels like it's made by the characters that it is about.
Yeah.
You were going to say something.
Oh, the other transition is that the instrumentation is now bananas.
Yeah.
It went from being like pianos and basses and things like that to just like this gnarly guitar and Tom Waits screaming through a bullhorn and whacking like trash can lids. Like
it's funny you mentioned
accordions, all kinds of weird instrumentation.
Something that really sets Tom Waits' other albums like this apart is the use of percussion instruments. Like there will only be one or two songs on an entire Tom Waits album that has a drum kit. Usually it's a series of banging sounds, or if it is a drum kit, I think Clap Hands might be one of those songs. It's more just like a rolling long drum sample that rather than like snare, bass.
Very unconventional drum setups.
Well, and the rhythms to his song are kind of often quite lurching as well. It would be weird to do it with like a traditional clean drum kit.
Yeah, 4 on the floor.
But,
what else we got for this? There's
a
lot to say about this album.
I was going to say, I got a track list sitting in front of me here. So after Clap Hands comes Cemetery Polka, the polka-iest of his polka songs. Also, just all the lyrics screamed, every single one. But after that comes 3 songs that I really like back-to-back. Jockey Full of Bourbon, Tango Till Their Store, Big Black Mariah.
Those are great.
It's like an amazing trio. The first 2 are very Spanish-inspired. The third one's very bluesy. And they also have a melody, which is different from some of his later work. I feel like one of the joys of Rain Dogs is that some of the songs still have melodies. He gets away from that in the industrial years a little bit, but then gets back to it in his old age years.
Moving down through, I like towards the end of the album is kind of where I hit my stride with it. With a song like Ninth and Hennepin.
I'm having a hard time remembering the name of which one Ninth and Hennepin is.
Ninth and Hennepin is one of his beat poetry songs.
Yeah, talking jazz.
He talks. I forget what some of the characteristic lines from that song are. It's like a really rough place, basically. Ninth and Hennepin, not a place you want to wander.
I don't know which track it is. I'm having a hard time remembering, but there's something that's very significant on Rain Dogs is, I think, one of Tom Waits' first spoken word tracks that of talking about there's nothing wrong with it, $100 wouldn't fix.
That's Ninth and Hennepin.
That's Ninth and Hennepin. Yeah. That is a great track of just telling a story. It doesn't even need to be a song, where he's such a strong storyteller that you find enjoyment out of something. You bought this CD because you wanted to listen to music, and now you're on this journey where you're listening to spoken word of just to hear the story. Blind Love. That's kind of I like that song in a way.
I'm trying to remember that song.
It's almost a country song.
The only kind of love is stone blind love.
And it has like steel guitars in it. It's
really weird coming right after Union Square, which is another kind of conventional genre song, which is like a raucous rock song. Yeah. And then, of course, after Walking Spanish, you go down to Downtown Train. The centerpiece.
For what it's worth,
climax.
I like Walking Spanish a lot. That line about Jesus wanting more time.
Yeah. I think that's the final non-chorus line of the song. Yeah, even Jesus wanted more time when he was walking Spanish down the hall.
I think for Downtown Train, this is one of those things where I wonder about Tom Waits' songwriting, because you have a song that's one of his catchiest songs, and it's also covered by a few musicians. Most famously, Rod Stewart covered it, and I had recently found out that Bob Seger covered it as well.
What?
And had intended to put it out, and then Rod Stewart put his out first. And then Bob Seger said, oh, well, I can't put it out. And then it wasn't available until the 2000s on a greatest hits. A Bob Seger collection of Bob Seger songs.
Is a lot better. I bet his is sad, like Tom Waits's is, unlike Rod Stewart's. I
wonder with Tom's writing style, where he has this catchy song that's made even catchier, and I would probably even say more listened to. I'm sure Rod Stewart's gets more radio play than Tom Waits. Does Tom Waits intentionally not make these dancey, radio-friendly songs? Or does he not... Maybe he doesn't even see that he has written this almost radio super hit, and then it takes somebody like a Rod Stewart to say, if you just changed the drum beat and sang this, you'd have a huge hit. And I wonder about which side of that he falls on.
I feel like there's a reason it comes where it does on the album. It's the last... I mean, you can say what you want about Anywhere I Lay My Head and Bride of Rain Dog. But I feel like Downtown Train is the final moment. It's like the final real song on Rain Dogs.
I think there's something to be said, too, about... I don't think Tom Waits is going for catchy. I think he knows he could do it, but I don't think it's what he likes or what he wants. He likes pathos, he likes sadness.
That's why Downtown Train is a very sad song.
Yeah,
it sounds like a pop song, but filtered through a sad filter.
Yeah, but it's a very upbeat ballad, is what he's
Or really what Rod Stewart did was he was like, if you take the sad boy filter off this song, it's really quite catchy and quite uplifting. And
which is weird, because the lyrics stay the same, and they are sad words. So I don't know how he manages to sing it in such a cheerful way. Like, will I see you tonight? The answer is no. Or it doesn't matter if you do. The answer is yes, but you still aren't going to get to hang out with her. And he sings it in such a chipper way.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but Anywhere I Lay My Head, I think, is one of the most special songs on the entire album, too. I think it's a great song. And maybe because I kind of relate to it in a way, but I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that song?
It's been ruined by the Jeff Rosenstock cover.
It was mastered by the Jeff Rosenstock cover.
I haven't heard the cover of it.
It's really... The Jeff Rosenstock cover doesn't really do anything new. It kind of takes the wilder elements of the Tom Waits version and accentuates them. Like the fact that Tom Waits screams every line in Anywhere I Lay My Head. That's why I don't really... I'm not trying to disparage it by saying that I don't consider it a real song, but it feels like the cap at the very end. It's like the denouement of the album. It's
a statement piece.
Exactly.
It's less of a song than a statement.
It's the encapsulation of every theme on the album, right? It doesn't matter if I've lost my home. Anywhere I lay my head is my home.
Yeah.
I'm so sad. is the tone of Rain Dogs. But yeah, I guess that's kind of how I feel about Anywhere I Lay My Head. It's the capstone on the album.
I really had and this is kind of the same deal for me as with Nighthawks. It was when I discovered this album, it hit me at that particular point in my life where I was a little bit homeless for a while. Not super long, but I was I got to leave my apartment that I had moved into after college, and then I had to, I moved in with my mom for a little bit, and then my mom had to move, so I couldn't move with her, and I was living in this abandoned apartment for a little bit without anywhere else to go. I didn't have a car yet, so I couldn't move to my dad's. So it was a very, like, hard time. And I was staying at a friend's house in Portland for, like, half the week, and then I'd stay at this abandoned apartment for the other half of the week. And I had kind of realized that there were certain things that never meant much to me up until that point. And those things, strangely enough, were a sleeping bag that I had and my 3DS, which had Animal Crossing on it. And I had kind of come to a point in my life where whenever I was going to sleep, if I was in my sleeping bag playing my Animal Crossing before I went to bed, it was good enough. Like, it was that was home. That sleeping bag in my fictional town in Animal Crossing, that was my home. And I really resonated with that song, just like anywhere I lay my head. That if I have these things, that is home to me. And that was really one of the things that song meant a lot. And I even... You ever try to show somebody a song and not realizing the connection you have to it is what makes it special? I just, like, offhandedly, like, showed that song to my dad one day, and he just, like, laughed because it was, like... he was screaming, Tom Waits is screaming through the whole song, and he's like, yeah, that's a good one. And I was like, that song is a good one, Dad. Like, and I think that really, closing off that album, really, just fits with the theme, and especially where I was almost going through that in my own way when I listened to it, really makes the whole album more special to me. But, I mean, what else do we have to say about Rain Dogs? I mean, I think we've pretty much got it. Are there pretty much kind of like with Nighthawks? Are there any aspects of this album that you think hold it back to other Tom Waits albums? I think it's probably the most Tom Waits album. Like when you ask people, like if you try to capture all the different things that he does, I think this album probably hits the most check marks, maybe. Yeah. But
the grab bagginess can kind of be an issue, where it's like it feels weird to have Singapore, Gun Street Girl, and like Anywhere I Lay My Head all on the same album.
Yeah,
it's very diverse.
See, I feel like it feels like a journey. It feels like a journey to me, at least. Like it starts out, you're out there in Singapore, right? Mm-hmm. And you go through this collection of like broken people and dreams and shit, and it feels like a journey from the outskirts into the city. And you end on Downtown Train. It's a hokey theme. It's overplayed, but this idea that when you're in a city, you're really no more or less alone than you are when you're in the middle of a field in the country, because those human connections aren't gonna happen on their own.
I had never realized how that was happening. Because you're right, the transition from kind of his more otherworldly international shit to the city talk.
Yeah, and that's why I think Downtown Train works so well where it is, because it feels like the end of the story. Not a story that has happened to any character, but like a story that has happened to you as a listener. And that's why I think the kind of come down of Bride of Rain Dog and Anywhere I Lay My Head are so necessary. Because if you just ended on Downtown Train, it would be devastating.
That's a good point, actually. I think probably that, I think you pretty much nailed the only quote-unquote flaw I can think of for this album, is that it's kind of a grab bag of themes and ideas as far as the musical construction of the album. So it can be kind of, you might not like every song on it, but then again, I kind of do, so who knows?
I think I don't love every song on any Tom Waits album.
Yeah.
But what I do love about Rain Dog is how they come together.
Yeah. I think, so I mean, that is the album I mentioned earlier that we're going to be giving away in a giveaway for this episode. So after we, talk about our next album, we will get into the details of that. But I think this is a great album. If you haven't listened to much Tom Waits, or if you don't want to own every Tom Waits, either one of those is a great album to start with or own.
I think it can be really intimidating to try to get into Tom Waits because there are so many different points of entry. He's got so many different albums out there, and some of them, not that they're not good, but from what I can tell at least, they're not they're a little more disjointed. They're a little more experimental.
Yeah.
I think Rain Dogs is probably the right one to listen to first.
I think you should listen to Small Change first.
The first album that I had ever heard was, Megan, you had shown it to me, was Glitter and Doom, which is a late career live album. So to get into Tom Waits entirely, you really have to like him as an artist. If you really like Glitter and Doom, you're not going to listen to Closing Time, his first album, and be like, okay, cool, it's not like Cannibal Corpse, where you're like, yeah, we have some just your meat and potatoes death metal for 25 years. It's not like that. So I think you have to really be invested into what he has to say, or maybe appreciate him as a storyteller rather than a songwriter. But I think, like I was kind of saying, I think Rain Dogs offers a lot of different Tom Waits ideas that can help you. If you like this song, there's probably an album that really reflects that type of, that type of song.
Yeah.
Do you know what album you probably shouldn't start with?
Bone Machine.
Bone Machine.
Which is what we're going to talk about next. Good transition.
Perfect.
All right. So I guess the job of introducing Bone Machine comes down to me.
Yes.
Bone Machine, when I first heard about Tom Waits, before I even started getting into him, I heard about Tom Waits attached to my late teen death metal listening years. Some people who I like to talk to death metal about came to me and were like, hey, have you heard of Tom Waits? Because I guess they were wide-ranging enough to be into him. And I hadn't heard of Tom Waits, but I went and looked stuff up about him, and from what I could tell, Bone Machine was his most inaccessible album. And inaccessible was kind of what I was looking for then, so I listened to Bone Machine, and only Bone Machine, from Tom Waits for a long time.
Well, that's really that type of singing is kind of what pulled me in to him in the first place, because by the time he gets to Glitter and Doom, that's just like rock music with a death metal vocalist. Like that is, we've reached the level of growling and rumbling where it's not even like natural singing at this point. Mm-hmm. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, perfect. I really like this album a whole lot. It is experimental. It doesn't have the same, I'm trying to look at the track list and see if I can spin it, but it doesn't really have the same Journey theme that Rain Dogs has. A lot of songs don't really have identifiable characters. A lot of songs don't really have identifiable arcs. Not all the songs are that good, but the songs that are good are some of my favorite Tom Waits songs. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about Such a Scream. I think Such a Scream is an amazing song. There's no other song in the Tom Waits catalog quite like that. And I think that's the case with a lot of the songs on Bone Machine, is they're quite singular. He had... It's like a piece of abstract painting. He had a tone in mind and then made a collection of 16 songs that matched that tone. I think Earth Died Screaming is a really abrupt song to start the album on, but that it prepares you for what is going to be an abrupt experience. And for me, I guess Bone Machine does something that I like, which is it peaks in the second half. I listened to the first half and I'm like, all right, this is cool, but I'm really looking forward to that turn. I'm looking forward to Jesus Gonna Be Here, where he does the weird lispy voice. Yeah, that lay preacher voice. Yeah, are there any other Tom Waits songs where he does that voice?
Well, I think in Clap Hands he kind of gets into that lispy thing, and even weirdly earlier than you would expect it. There's some of that stuff on Blue Valentine, which is totally jazzy, and he's still, and especially in the intro, which I think is a cover of a West Side Story song or something. I don't know. He kind of, when he says time for us, it's us. He really hammers it almost in I almost want to say a Louis Armstrong kind of where it's emphasized that he's doing this unnatural voice. You can obviously hear this water. Do you want more water?
Yeah, please.
Do you want any water, Ben?
A little water break. No, thanks.
Since I have to, you're going to hear it anyway.
While we're talking about Tom Waits doing funny voices, on my bike ride here, I heard a weird Tom Waits song off Bad As Me, where he sings in a falsetto, and it's very upsetting.
You should listen to Bad As Me.
It's a very listen to the whole falsetto.
Thing. Bad As Me is a really good album. I enjoy that album a lot. But yeah, after Jesus Gonna Be Here, you get In the Coliseum, you get Going Out West, you get Murder in the Red Barn, you get Black Wings. Those are the songs that define Bone Machine for me. That particular tone. It feels like it takes place in the middle of America exclusively.
Red dirt.
Red dirt, exactly. You can see forever in any direction, but you can't see anything happening. The only thing that's happening is what's happening to you. And what's happening to you is terrifying.
It's strange that you say that, because the one word that I think of as far as the production of the sound of the music on this album is barren. It's no pun intended with the song All Stripped Down. It's a very stripped down production, and it feels very... There are only a couple songs that have a full band sound. Usually it's him with like an oboe, or him and one acoustic guitar. Like, there's a lot of... And it really matches the theme of the music that he's going for. That's
one of the things that I love about Jesus Gonna Be Here, is just that little twanging, that like bow bow, on the song that kind of punctuates every single one of his lines.
With that said, the 3 songs you listed, In the Coliseum, Going Out West, and Murder in the Red Barn, are kind of driven by like a driving bass, not bass, but like percussion throughout the song.
Pulsing rhythm section.
Yeah, very like intense and like not lurching at all, actually. And those ones just like aggressive driving.
Yeah,
that's one thing that I have.
Those 3 songs are a freight train.
I had put in my notes, as aside from like Going Out West, I actually had written like, why does percussion have to be so fucking weird? Like, why can't we just have some fucking drums? Like,
but the percussion is the backbone of the song, right?
Yeah.
That's like, if you want to have a weird song, you got to have weird percussion. That's why Primus is such a weird band.
Speaking of which,
Les Claypool.
Les Claypool is on Earth Died Screaming playing bass, and I really liked that song, but I can't help but kind of feel underwhelmed by it, because I knew he was on it before I had heard it. So I pictured what type of song... I had an infinite amount of imagination of what type of song would Les Claypool and Tom Waits write together. 2 of the weirdest rock musicians of the 20th century collaborating on a song. And it just feels a little... It's that barren, stripped-down production. It's not as Primacy as I thought it would be, I think.
Primus is pretty funky. Like, a lot funkier than Tom Waits ever gets.
I don't think a Primus bass line would fit on Bone Machine.
You know, I think I expect a fuzzy guitar-sounding bass guitar, and I think he's just playing like an upright bass on that.
I actually love that about that song. That, like, Les Claypool comes into the studio and he does what Tom Waits wants him to do, right? He's like, I'm gonna perform the shit out of that stripped down bare bass line, and he does.
There are some really funny stories about Tom Waits and Keith Richards collaborations, because Keith Richards played guitar on a shit ton of Tom Waits songs.
Yeah.
And Tom Waits tells this really funny story about how Keith doesn't write anything down, and he doesn't remember shit. So when they were writing together, they would be like noodling around for hours, and then at one moment, Keith just yells, "Scribe!" And Tom Waits looks around, and Keith Richards yells, "Scribe!" again. And he comes to the realization that he is meant to be the scribe, who was supposed to have been writing this shit down.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so he's like, I'm not used to feeling like the adult in a room, and I realize that when me and Keith are writing, I'm supposed to be the adult. So.
Confirming once again, of course, what we've all suspected, that Lil Wayne is the Keith Richards of rap music.
Yes.
He doesn't write anything down.
And it works.
And it works so well.
We'll have to do our Lil Wayne episode.
I'm excited, yeah.
So I think one of the things that... I don't know, and maybe you guys would disagree with this, but before I say this, I guess, is this album one of, maybe not the most, but is it one of the most critically acclaimed Tom Waits albums? I think it won the most awards of any Tom Waits album.
Because he got a Grammy for a different album.
I think he may have gotten one for this as well.
I think it was the first time he started getting
traction.
Attention and traction. I believe he was nominated for Bone Machine for a Grammy. But I think that is probably one of the reasons why it has stuck in the maw of the critical consciousness for so long.
I think it's one of his more artistic albums too. Like I feel like sometimes we use the word artistic as shorthand for weird, but it's both. It's conceptual, so. And it's cohesive. Is the other thing.
I was spaced because I was trying to look up. It did win a Grammy for Best Alternative Music Album,
Dope.
Which it definitely is.
Yeah, this is real alternative music.
Yeah,
I don't like what's on the radio.
Linkin Park.
Here's an alternative. You could be listening to this guy scream into a bullhorn.
I have a hard time with the albums that I like by Tom Waits so much. I have a hard time. I like some of the songs a lot off of Bone Machine, but overall, I have to admit that I like Bone Machine less than either Nighthawks or Rain Dogs.
I forgive you.
Thank you, Ben. And part of the reason for that is two examples. Both Dirt in the Ground and Going Out West are on Bone Machine, and I think the live versions on Glitter and Doom are far superior in every way to the studio version.
I'm gonna disagree about Going Out West.
Really?
I like the Bone Machine version a lot. It's real clean.
Yeah.
Because I had heard, I said before I'd listened to this album with you, and that was one of the songs that I was like, okay, I like this guy.
It's the funniest fucking song he's ever written.
And usually when you listen to a live album, you if you like a song, you listen to the studio one because that's usually a cleaner, better, more polished version. Seeing an artist live, there's a certain amount of integrity in the music that has to get lost for the purpose of them all playing at once and seeing it live. And I was actually disappointed with the studio version of Going Out West because it doesn't capture the energy and I don't think it hits as hard as the studio one, which if you've only heard the studio one might not make sense because it's one of the only songs that has those banging drums and the fuzzy bass and fuzzy guitars, and it's one of the only songs on that album that's a full band, like really driving this instrumental.
Going Out West sounds like driving not even 60. I'm an old lady. 60 is fast in my mind. No, going like 80 miles an hour on the highway in a red car. That's what it feels like.
It feels like it's being sung from the back of a speeding pickup truck.
Yes.
It's
and then
I get that from the studio version.
I think on the other side of that, Dirt in the Ground, I think the raspy, whispery voice he uses live is more effective than the kind of warbly, higher registry of the studio album.
I love the contrast between Earthside Screaming going straight into Dirt in the Ground. It's like, well, here's the whole range. Here's the grumbliest, and the highest pitched falsetto on the album. I
think I really like Dirt in the Ground. Weirdly enough, I'm proud of the fact that I don't have any script tattoos, because usually from a person that hangs out in tattoo shops, usually 18-year-old kids that want their first tattoo, they go for script. They go for something intelligent somebody else said. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just from seeing it over and over again and seeing what kind of trope it is, I've always been jokingly proud of the fact that I don't have song lyrics or anything. And Dirt in the Ground, there are only 2 songs that I've ever considered getting song lyrics from, and they're both Tom Waits songs, and Dirt in the Ground is one of those songs, the line, "We're chained to the world and we all gotta pull." I think that is I'm very affected by that song lyric. And I was just, same thing, I'd heard Glitter and Doom, and I loved that song. And then I listened to it, and I was like, this is good, but it's a lot weirder than on Glitter and Doom. I think I'll always listen to Glitter and Doom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree that version's a lot better.
What else do we have to say about Bone Machine?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've pretty much covered it.
Oh, you know what we haven't talked about? Well, let me just keep going.
All right.
Murder in the Red Barn.
I Don't Want to Grow Up is easily one of my top 5 favorite Tom Waits songs.
Yeah, me too.
I think it has that instrumentation. It has drums. It has an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar, and it has chorus verse, chorus, verse. It has structure. And I think that it fits in really well on that album. Probably more than it would fit on another album because everything else is so absent of those themes that it really stands out amongst the track listing on Bone Machine.
I think I Don't Want to Grow Up is kind of the downtown train of Bone Machine. It fits the exact same purpose. And then That Feel is the Anywhere I Lay My Head of Bone Machine. It's the solid encapsulation of the themes that follows up like the most incisive expression of those themes. Granted, my understanding of the themes on Bone Machine is a lot more vague than my understanding of those on Rain Dog, so I can't speak extemporaneously in any more detail about that.
It's such a horror album. If you read the name of the titles, like Earth Died Screaming, such a scream, Jesus Gonna Be Here, In the Coliseum, Murder in the Red Barn, Black Wings. Like, they're such...
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of that way, too. He's clearly inspired by some kind of... I don't know. When I think about the Midwest, I think of horror too. You know?
Maybe it's a nightmare album.
It is, yeah.
Right?
I mean, even I don't know if he explores. I don't know enough about the lyrical content to know if he explores it. But even the name Bone Machine is a scary name, and I don't really know what that means in the context of the album. I've never.
It's the kind of thing you would have a nightmare
Aren't
about.
we all bone machines, really?
Yeah. So, what else do we have? Is there much else for Bone Machine? I think if I just want to keep in line of what holds this album back, I think you're sacrificing a lot of song structure for cool themes on this album. It's hard to be like driving around in your car and listening to Bone Machine. I know because I did it this week a few times. And I'm like, I can't really rock out to this. I'm scared and I don't know how to tap my foot to this.
I'm one of those people that likes to construct like fun playlists, and Going Out West goes on a driving playlist.
Oh yes, absolutely.
That's a windows down song.
Going Out West, so they appreciate me.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about screaming like I got hair on my chest. Yeah. I look good without a shirt. Like when you're.
Yeah, I know karate. Voodoo too.
I don't need makeup. I got real scars. That is a really cool.
Yeah.
You know. My friends think I'm ugly, but I got a masculine face. I love that.
Then the way he says it,
yeah.
I got a masculine face.
I do have to admit that I think it severely lacks from the live version where he does his own backup vocals on the I Look Good Without a Shirt. He looks good without a shirt, like to give the band a second to kick into the next verse. Yeah, I think that's a great album. I think I would have to rank it a little bit less just because it's so dismal and barren compared to his other...
Come on, Curtis, what happened to those death metal bona fides?
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I guess that's about it for that one for me.
Cormac McCarthy made an album.
I think it is a very McCarthy-esque album. Yeah, true. Lit talk.
Sorry.
I don't know. I don't mean
it
cool.
feels
You've
like...
probably read The Road.
I have not, actually. It's been at the top of my books I need to read list for like 3 years.
Read Blood Meridian.
I'll put it on.
You will not enjoy Blood Meridian.
Nobody does.
This is why I always need both of you at the same time.
Because Megan's going to be honest, I'm going to be an asshole.
Know, it works both ways. One of you will be like, check this out, and the other one's like, you're not going to like that. Like, thanks, guys. Like, you work well in that regard to me. So is that it for Bone Machine?
I feel comfortable with that.
We noticed before we started that we had kind of picked an album from the 70s and then the 80s and then the 90s. Mm-hmm. So I think if you like Tom Waits, hopefully this was a good, you can appreciate our analysis of these albums. If you don't listen to much Tom Waits, I think we picked 3 great albums to set you off on your journey if it sounds interesting. Hopefully we made Rain Dog sound cool enough because that is the album we're doing a giveaway of, so I guess details on that makes sense to lead into that. This episode is going to go up, obviously if I say this coming Monday, that doesn't have any effect on
Monday the 14th.
The 14th
of August.
On that day, after it goes up, I will be posting a picture of the Black Gold logo and the cover of Rain Dogs on my Instagram account. That's KurtCake5K. So if you go on there and tag 2 people in it, that will it'll buy your entry into the giveaway. And then when the next episode goes up 2 weeks from that point, right before we record, I will draw a name and we'll announce it on the next show of who is going to get mailed their copy of Bone Machine. Rain Dogs, not Bone Machine. So
You'll have to buy your own copy of Bone Machine.
Yeah, or wait till Tom Waits Part 2 when I...
How is this drawing going to go? Are you going to write down a bunch of people's Instagram names on little slips of paper?
We were actually discussing the logistics of this, and I have not ruled out either find a website that will help me do it or put names in my sweaty hat. So... yeah, that's about it. I think we're going to start working on some giveaways once in a while. Not every episode. I'm way too poor to afford that. Yeah. But this seemed like a cool... episode 10, a cool little new thing to try. And, hopefully you enjoy it. So, yeah. That's about it. We have to give away our little plugs that we usually do at the end of an episode. Like I said before, I'm on Instagram at CurtCake5K. Twitter as well. We have a new thing. We have a YouTube channel now. Woo! Yeah, so if you want to get involved in the discussion about our episodes, you can go into that YouTube comments section. If a topic on an episode has intrigued you, but you don't want to listen to the entire episode to figure out when we start talking about what you're interested in, then you can click little annotations in the description. Like, if you just want to hear every time I ever talked about Nier Automata, you can do that. I've made myself available to you. And yeah, I'm going to keep uploading them to the YouTube channel. What is the YouTube channel? It's Ben and Curt. It's Ben and Curt, yes. And I don't know if you plug that on your Instagram or something. I don't know if that would be useful. I'll probably post it on Facebook after this episode goes out. Yeah, I really like, since we're co-hosts of this, I like that you are spearheading that, and I kind of spearhead the iTunes aspect of it. Yeah. So I think it's really cool. Some people just prefer, I think, listening to shows on YouTube rather than... doing something on YouTube. It gives you maybe an easy way to subscribe, a way to access the show. I also upload a little image with each one that... I've been loving those, by the way. Yeah, they're all right. They're all right. I saw your little jab, your little Tony Hawk one there. Yeah, that Tony Hawk. Write that on the list of episodes. Curtis and I were talking about episodes we're going to do in the future before we recorded this one, and he's writing Tony Hawk 2. Oh, we're going specifically Tony Hawk 2 GBA. Okay. Yeah, Tony Hawk 2. We'll focus on... the GBA. Part 1 will be all other 12 Tony Hawk games. We'll have a whole episode about Tony Hawk 2 on the GBA. So excited for this. I'm sure it only costs $2 to buy. So. Jesus, if you can find it, like, how hard is it to find a specific Game Boy Advance game? So what else do we got? I think next time we won't be talking about Tony Hawk 2 on the GBA. Nope. We'll be talking about a game that is almost as good as Tony Hawk 2. The greatest video game of all time, I think you meant to say. Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas. I'm going to finally finish it. Yep. I'm excited. So hopefully you have 3 months of time where you live in between the 2 weeks in our universe to play and experience 3 different files on New Vegas. Mm-hmm. And so that's that. Thank you, Megan, for coming on. Thank you, Megan. Do you have any plugs that you would like to plug? Don't find me. Yeah, I knew that was going to be your answer when I said that. Leave me alone. You're lucky we came here. Yeah, so you got me into Tom Waits, and now you're... getting me out. Yeah. Yep. You ruined it for me. Thank you. We're never going to listen to Tom Waits again. I actually counted... Frank's Wild Years is the 18th Tom Waits album that I own. Whew. Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to go for all of them. You're a champ. I'm missing a couple. There are a lot of them. Not all bangers. There are only like 1 or 2 so far that I have that I don't like. Mm. Yeah, it's like maybe I don't need to listen to Heart Attack and Vinyl. Yeah. Alice is one of the really weirder ones that's hard to get into. Alice is a part of a 3-part trilogy where he collaborated with a director. Yeah, there were like a series of stage plays that he did scores to. Yeah, he also scored a Scorsese movie he did the soundtrack to. That's not great. Yeah, I haven't heard that one yet. What a weird guy. For that, I believe. Doesn't mean not a Grammy. Great. He won an Oscar. Yeah, doesn't mean it's great. I know, I hear you. So yeah, that's it for this time. We'll be back next time to talk about Fallout New Vegas, unless you guys got anything else. Thank you again, Megan, for coming on. Thank you, Megan, for guesting. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Goodbye. Bye.